Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello and welcome to another interview with Robotics and Automation News. This interview is with two senior executives at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Trevor Paul, Chief Mobility Officer, and Charlie Tyson, Technology Activation Manager. They both work for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, but obviously with various units. They are mainly responsible for mobility. We're talking about two subjects today. We are talking about electric vehicle charging and the whole infrastructure for electric vehicles. And we're also talking about a drone corridor that Michigan has recently introduced. So, yeah, these two initiatives are basically among the very first of their kind in the US. So, very forward-looking state, Michigan, and a very interesting interview as well.
Good morning. My name is Trevor Paul. I'm the Chief Mobility Officer of the state of Michigan, and as part of that role, lead the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, which focuses on the future of transportation as it relates to automotive, but also other modes of transportation. So we do a lot of work stitching together public-private partnerships. We do a lot of work building Michigan's mobility narrative, and we do a lot of work on the policy side, making sure that we have the right regulatory frameworks in mind that would allow for not just the future of mobility to occur on ground, but also other dimensions like in the air. So it's great to be here today.
I'm Charlie Tyson. I work under Trevor through the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. My title is Technology Activation Manager, which is something that's super fun and something I'm passionate about. And really what that entails is working with companies globally and locally in Michigan to understand ways to help them connect with communities here in our state, to find ways to essentially improve the quality of life related to getting people to and from medical appointments, getting goods and vital medical supplies to people that may not have the access to those goods. So everything really revolves around how we move people and goods using technology and new mobility solutions, and making sure that we engage communities to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, we're at the office, the website of the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. Now, I think what your organization and your people yourselves have been doing has been absolutely fascinating. We've carried two stories on our website recently. One was about the drones corridor. I'll try and set those up as well now. Between Canada and Michigan, America, and the other one that we today published was about the on-road wireless or inductive charging for cars. So as cars and vehicles move along, if they're electric and they're set up to be charged in that way, they can get charged as they move along. Those are the two stories I've received and published recently, and it shows that you're really advanced. I mean, that is the first. I mean, you can tell me obviously, but that's the first wireless road charging network in the US, I believe. So, Trevor, do you want to start giving us an overview of what Michigan is doing and mentioning these, maybe highlighting these and other initiatives?
Yeah, sure. So, people don't realize that the three-color traffic signal, lane markings, paved road, like that all came from Michigan. Like we did that. And we wrote the playbook for it. And ultimately, it spread all over the world. And we, beyond growing our industry, building vehicles, conducting R&D on the future of autonomous technologies, shared, connected, electric, we view our role as also driving infrastructure forward. And so we've tried to, over the last year and a half, create signature projects that can inspire other regions around the world and also make life a little better here in Michigan. And, you know, one of those things, as we aggressively roll out charging stations, because we know we want to get our electric vehicle adoption numbers up, we also wanted to lead, to try something that had never been tried before, because we think that it could be the way of the future. And that's a wireless charging corridor where the road charges the vehicle as it's in motion. Right now, we're starting it with a project in Detroit. Our partners include Electrion, Ford Motor Company, and Next Energy. And the goal is to install a mile of this technology on a public road. And where this really makes sense is if you think about transit vehicles that take the same route over and over and over again, to not have to stop at a station to charge, but rather to charge while in motion makes a lot of sense. Same with delivery vans and other sort of vehicles that operate in a routine way. And so we're excited about it. And hopefully, you know, deployment goes well and we can continue to expand this wireless charging system, because we do think this is where charging is headed. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're as EV friendly as possible by installing charging stations today, but then also thinking about tomorrow and being as friendly to innovation as we possibly can be.
Charlie, would you like to give your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I will say is that we are really excited about the amount of activity in wireless charging right now and how Michigan has kind of solidified its place in the global mobility market as a place that's friendly to these types of innovations. There's companies left and right that are looking to engage Michigan and to deploy by working with public and private partners. So we like to be that liaison there. As commercial, Trevor alluded to this, but as commercial fleet electrification increases, the sky's the limit, if you will, when it comes to wireless charging. So really excited about it.
This is a very forward-looking initiative. So the story is that Governor Whitmer has launched of Michigan, your authority has launched a air corridor for drones. This reminds me, excuse me, this reminds me of a story about NASA once having developed a kind of a theoretical framework for how drones can be operated, sort of like an air traffic control system, which they were proposing a few years ago, which may be kind of a kind of helpful sort of suggestion to authorities like yourself. I don't know how you can explain a bit about this. What is the corridor and what's it intended for, and how did you develop it? And tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, so I'll start, but really this is a project that Charlie is taking lead on, which is why we wanted him on the call. So ideally I'll set the stage and then Charlie can dance on it. So the idea here is, you know, we believe aerial mobility is a mode of transportation that will be needed going forward in critical moments, such as delivering medicine, consumer goods, life-saving devices. If someone, say, has a heart attack on a highway and there's a traffic jam, you can fly a drone in. Critical manufacturing parts where something the size of a quarter, if it breaks on a machine, could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to a company every 30 minutes that machine is down. And so there's some really functional use cases. And then when you think about all the activity at the Michigan-Ontario border, and we actually have 2 of the top 3 busiest border crossings between US and Canada. We look at aerial mobility as a way to alleviate some bottlenecks and, frankly, create better experiences for those that need goods or need to cross a border. And so, we partnered with some of the best companies in the world at this stuff, like TELUS and Airspace Link and Ford and even the province of Ontario, to begin to think about, so what would a commercial drone skyway look like? And how do we do it responsibly? How do we create the right policies, the right technical requirements so that it's an equitable and inclusive transportation option. And also, like, we roll it out in a way where, like, you know, you don't walk out of your house and you hear a bunch of drones flying over your head. That'd be terrible. So how do we do this responsibly? If we know this technology is coming, how do we do it responsibly? And that's the goal here. Create the business case and then work with companies like Amazon and UPS and FedEx and others that are really leaning into this space to make sure that Michigan's a leader and can help set national standards. Charlie, turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. I would just add, you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. I would add a little bit more around the nuts and bolts of this announcement and where Michigan's at when it comes to drones and where we see the state being in the coming years. So this feasibility study and engineering analysis is really key and critical for us to be able to get approval for what's called beyond visual line of sight through it's an approval process. It's a certification, if you will, through the FAA in order to essentially be able to fly a drone, again, beyond visual line of sight. Right now, there are projects and companies deploying drones throughout the world, but right here in Michigan, working with healthcare systems to move vital patient care items, medical supplies from one facility to another within visual line of sight, but really to unlock economic opportunities for companies to come here and to deploy. We need to get this approval and to understand what the safety cases are. Are there certain routes we should be looking at, whether that's along train tracks or waterways? How does this aerial mobility corridor communicate with ground-based systems like vehicles, for example? We have to understand what type of infrastructure is going to be required to operate these drones in a safe and persistent manner that isn't causing loud noises and that waking people up at night, if you will. Like, we got to do it in a way that's not going to hinder communities and residents, but in a way that's going to unlock significant economic development opportunities for companies, but also, finding ways to do good from a social impact standpoint by getting people vital goods way quicker. It's something that we don't think about as much, average individuals, but it's really important for some people being able to get goods and much quicker, whether it's for a healthcare standpoint or even just groceries, for example. So we're doing this in a way that is going to align with other industry partners, the FAA, and also working with NASA, as you mentioned, just to understand where they're at, how we can leverage their expertise and collaborate as a group.
Absolutely ambitious and complex, and absolutely, it's fascinating that a lot of piecemeal initiatives have been taking place over the last few years, and I've heard of the line of sight rule, where you are, if you're going to operate a drone, you have to have it in your view at all times. Obviously, if that ends, and it needs to end in order for commercialization of the whole drone business, there is going to be a regulatory framework needed. Some people say that these technologies are coming in so fast that regulators like yourselves, I suppose, are kind of being left behind, whether it's driverless cars or drones. But let me ask you a couple of quick not technical, but what's the distance we're looking at of the corridor? How far is it from the Michigan place and the Ontario place that is there specific places? I don't know what approximately, what's the distance?
Yeah, Trevor, feel free to hop in if I've missed anything, but the study and the analysis will look at 3 different routes, essentially corridors, one being in Southeast, I guess 2 being in Southeast Michigan, one looking at cross-border with Ontario. And then we are kind of keeping it open-ended as far as the RFP winners, the companies Thales and Airspace Link, who are conducting this engineering analysis and study. We want them to come to us at the state with recommendations on additional corridors or routes, whether that's West Michigan, a route in the UP, Upper Peninsula, in more of a rural setting, And these routes can be from targeting around 40 to 60 miles, but as battery technology improves and the ability to have a higher payload, essentially being able to deliver packages with more weight, higher number of packages based on improvements of battery technology, that distance will extend.
40 to 60 miles. And at the moment, yeah, the range of a typical drone, like the one in the pictures, is quite limited. But I suppose by the time this route is open, or the corridor is open, and within a few years there'll be larger drones, and there might be other type. Would other types of new types of aircraft be? I don't know if new types of aircraft. The ones I'm thinking of is the vertical takeoff things. They don't really need specific corridors, do they? It's quite complicated, actually. I don't know. You know, the vertical aircraft I'm talking about, the drones that are designed to carry people. Is that going to be included? Do you imagine that kind of thing is going to be included? And what kind of time frame are we looking at for these things to, to say officially be open to drones to fly freely between these areas?
Yeah, Charlie, I think you can talk a little bit more about the time frame and any other sort of conversations that we've had as a team regarding other types of aircraft. But what I can tell you is we wouldn't do this if it wasn't going to be foundational to other forms of travel. We've talked to the VTOL companies, and I think we would love to be the first northern climate city to regularly embrace VTOL technology, flying cars. We want to build them too. So we want to access this industry for our supply chain, which we think, could be a huge competitive advantage to any VTOL company around the world. And so we look at it in both of those ways, but you got to start by understanding what, the federal rules are. You got to understand what, rules are in individual communities. You got to start with smaller vehicles, and you got to start with limited routes. And that opens the door to commercial drones. But rest assured, everything that we do here is setting the stage, creating the business model, the framework, the map, whatever you want to call it, for other types of aircrafts. Because Michigan wants to be the aerial mobility leader, and this is how you do it. Like, I think there's things to learn from places like North Dakota, North Carolina. They've been aggressive, and that's been cool. But we want to be up there too, and that's why we're doing this. So Charlie, I don't know if I missed anything, but
no, I would just add on to the whole eVTOL discussion, electric vehicle takeoff and landing. So this is a really exciting market. A lot of activity here, a lot of investments actually from even automotive companies, OEMs looking to invest in emerging startups with significant venture capital funding, significant, not just aviation experience, but these drone and eVTOL companies are leveraging automotive engineers. They are following aviation standards, but they are trying to be able to leverage auto engineers in Michigan, because over time, many of these companies want to produce, let's say 1,000 units a year. And for aviation and aerospace, that's significant. So it's really interesting. I think as battery technology improves, the distance will extend. Right now, many of these companies are looking at hybrid or hybrid electric aircraft, moving packages. If it is a personal aerial mobility vehicle or a small plane, essentially, that is hybrid or electric, that is really geared towards shorter ranges from, let's say, Ann Arbor to Detroit. Instead of sitting in traffic for an hour, potentially, you could just take an electric or hybrid aircraft that is manned and be there in 20 minutes. Same with Palo Alto to San Francisco. We all know that there can be significant congestion along that route. So how can we, next time that you are sitting in traffic and getting quite frustrated, if you're like me, think about the opportunities from a manned aircraft, personal manned aircraft, obviously having a pilot and a fleet, a service, a subscription, or being able to essentially get on your phone and book a flight So it's really exciting times. Definitely looking at aerial mobility from more than just drones under 500 feet altitude, looking at all types of airspace and aircraft that will operate here in Michigan, working with our key partners at MDOT Aeronautics, working with regional airports like the Gerald R. Ford International Airport, who we've recently partnered with, along with Southwest Airlines, to look at technologies impacting how people travel, not just from an airspace perspective, but from a concourse and parking, et cetera. So a lot of interest, a lot of opportunity, and we're just excited to be partnering with key partners in the public and private space that we've mentioned today.
Okay, Charlie, if I could quickly ask Trevor, because he's got to go, just one question about the electric inductive charging thing. Tell us a bit more, elaborate a bit more about that, what you're doing and what you think the future holds for that kind of technology in Michigan.
Yeah,
the world,
yeah, sure. So, I mean, we have a goal to be carbon neutral by 2050 in Michigan. And, you know, transportation emissions are one of the main reasons globally why we have issues with climate. So, to the extent that we can introduce a portfolio of different battery electric charging options, I think it makes people and businesses more comfortable flipping their fleet over to electric. And so I think also, as we're rolling out this technology, we're thinking about the policies that we'll need to enforce and to make sure that the grid can manage it. So it's really a system-based approach that we're taking. And, you know, I think it's Michigan's job to be doing that sort of thing, that sort of leading. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me, and hopefully we can talk soon.
Thank you, Trevor. If you don't mind, Charlie, I'll carry on talking to you and say goodbye to Trevor. Thanks for your time, Trevor. Have a good day.
Sure, I have a few more minutes. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much of the road part of it you can talk about, but I'm sure you know enough. But just, I suppose, one last thing about this. The other day, I interviewed somebody in, I think it's Slovakia, a country called Slovakia in Europe. He's invented a flying car, which, I mean, there are other flying cars people have invented, but unusually this one has got a license. It's got a license to fly. It's allowed to fly in Europe. Now, he said to me that, you know, I said to him, you know, it'd be helpful if regulators could come up with the kind of structures that you're doing with this drone corridor, air corridor. And he basically said that they don't really need it because they can land and take off from any airport or a private field. And the regulations beyond the, obviously, air travel is always regulated. Those are the regulations that they're going to keep to. I don't know what your perspective is on that is. I mean, these eVTOL, would they, if they flying from one building top to another, what is it that you regulate? Is it the height or what can you regulate about them?
That's a great question, and I've learned a lot from the MDOT Aeronautics team, and I encourage you to connect with them as well for more of the technical expertise that they have. But I do know that after working in this market for some last couple of years now, as drones and aerial mobility has picked up, that, you know, really there are current personal aircraft being flown from airport to airport every single day, moving people and goods. They are internal combustion engines, obviously piloted. So the systems are in place for regional aerial mobility using eVTOLs. It's more from a technology and battery standpoint, in my opinion, from what I've seen. There are questions and there's things that need to be understood and standardized when it comes to urban air mobility. So having a vertiport, essentially a helicopter pad on top of buildings, we need to figure out, like, are there what types of regulations through FAA should we be thinking about, whether it's the height of the helipad, whether it's the amount of flights that can be taken, time of day, for example, weather, ground-based safety risks. So if there's, highly populated area, maybe that's not the best place to actually take off and land. So these are things that we're looking at through this study and in partnership with, again, Airspace Link, Thales, and MDOT Aeronautics, and more to come.
Okay, so last question then.
Sure.
What's in it for Michigan as a state, or in terms of is it going to what kind of benefits do you think these kind of initiatives get? Does it bring in more investment? Factories, new kind of factories are built, or what is it? What kind of I don't know much about local authorities and how they sort of approach or how they think about what it's not like a private enterprise where what the motives would be, profit and whatever. But what kind of, how does a state like Michigan sort of think when it comes to these kind of technologies?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. We always want to be thinking about how these technology deployments and these new solutions can support Michigan residents. What are the challenges they're facing? These aren't technologies that are just pie in the sky, like Jetsons type things. Some of these technologies are going to take some time to be fully operational. Some of them are more near term. But the big thing is understanding how these new solutions and how these new companies can support challenges in Michigan that residents are facing. That's really number one. Number two is how can we leverage these foundational assets, like getting a potential approval through the FAA for beyond visual line of sight drone delivery. If we can get that done and working in tandem with the FAA, it will unlock significant economic development opportunities for the state of Michigan. There are companies that as large as UPS and FedEx, Amazon, that are looking at states that are really forward thinking when it comes to delivery of goods and packages. So if we can lay this foundation where it's easy for companies to come in, if they are certified, they will be able to deploy in these corridors and these routes based on the Michigan's approval that is hopefully going to be done through the FAA, or hopefully is done soon. So from an economic and investments perspective, we do see a lot of opportunities for companies to come to Michigan to deploy their technology, but also to work with suppliers in Michigan, to work with manufacturers that could be contractors, working with economic development authorities to identify facilities. And to be honest, I may be biased, but Michigan is truly one of the best places to live, work, and play. Having the Great Lakes, lower cost of living, etc. We're really becoming a strong magnet for companies globally to move to set up additional teams. We're really excited and we see a lot of activity. So these types of initiatives really help us build that pipeline of investment from the private sector.
Okay, great. Let me ask you one last bonus question,
Sure.
last question, if you like. A little bit of a fun question. If the regulatory framework was conducive to both types of technology, this drone corridor, drones and aircraft in general, or new types of aircraft in general, and electric vehicles, maybe even autonomous electric vehicles as well, which one do you think would develop fastest?
That's a great question. I think it depends. I think with aerial mobility and drones, you'll see beyond visual line of sight drone deployments happen. Essentially, that's not happening right now. You'll see drones, there are drone projects happening right now between facility to facility within visual line of sight. So that's happening. You're also seeing autonomous vehicles being deployed in through fleets, fixed routes, using the sensor suite. So it's a tricky question, but I think being able to lay the two different foundations for the companies to deploy related, and from a ground-based standpoint, I'm talking about the CAVNU project, the Connected Autonomous Vehicle Corridor between Detroit and Ann Arbor, which is one application and use case being looked at and explored currently is a dedicated autonomous vehicle lane. So Still some things to work out there. We're very excited that Cavenue has picked Michigan to develop this infrastructure. But in short, I do see, connected and autonomous vehicles, trucks, for example, being deployed very soon, and then persistent drones beyond visual line of sight coming shortly after.
Right. Yeah, I think that's logical. It seems to be the case that basically because there's more cars around, more people are buying electric cars, and the electric truck, autonomous truck even industry is growing at a rapid pace, and drones, yeah, they're developing quite quickly as well, but it's such a new technology. It's got further, more ground to, more development to do before it catches up with the automotive industry in general. So yeah, it seems sensible. Well, that was a fascinating interview.
We really appreciate you having us, Abdul. Definitely enjoy conversating about this and look forward to talking soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charlie, for your time and your insights.
Take care, Abdul.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.